So this guy, let's call him Frenchie, because he's super French. And Frenchie is about to con people out of $40 million. Now Frenchie, he's kind of a turd. He's been in and out of jail for petty theft, forgery, counterfeiting. But Frenchie's also one charming motherfucker. Like, he can talk anyone into anything. And one day, he decides that instead of petty theft, he's gonna go for a really big score. And now, his girlfriend has a rich father who owns a high-end townhouse in Paris. And so Frenchie, he creates a fake property deed for this building in Paris that he doesn't own, and he tries to sell it for $1.4 million. Oh, but he doesn't stop there. He continues this string of crimes, and sometime later, he successfully robs a jewelry store. And lucky for him, he doesn't actually get caught for this robbery. But now, he's a wanted man. So he decides to flee France, and he goes to the place where he can make some serious money, the United States. And once he's there, he goes to Los Angeles, where he starts making lots of friends in the nightlife scene. 'Cause, like I said, he's a charming guy. Now, he doesn't tell anyone he meets that he's just a regular turd who's wanting for robbing a jewelry store in Europe. Instead, he always lies to them and says he's related to someone successful and famous. Like, he tells people he's Dino De Laurentiis' nephew, he's a famous movie producer, or he'll tell them he's Oscar De La Renta's nephew. Oscar De La Renta is a famous fashion designer. And as absurd as that is, this works, and people believe him, and they love Frenchie. They find him so interesting. And soon enough, he finds himself becoming friends with actual famous people like Mickey Rourke and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he's trying to do a business deal with Michael Jackson's brother, Jermaine Jackson. Now, as cool as that is, Frenchie is a con man at heart, so he has to start really scamming people to pay his bills and keep up this big lifestyle. And he makes a lot of money from this scam. His scam works like this. He takes some unsuspecting sucker out for dinner and champagne at expensive restaurants, and he picks up the tab, which gives that person the impression that Frenchie is already rich and that he would never scam you. Then he'll offer this person an investment opportunity, like, you should invest in the clothing store I'm about to open. Oh! And of course, the people invest because they trust him, because they already think he's the rich nephew of someone famous. And so Frenchie cons a lot of people this way. And by the way, I'm skipping over a lot in this story because he committed so many crimes and ripped off so many people, I couldn't possibly fit it all in one video. Anyway, eventually he gets reported for some of these crimes, and police catch on, and boom, he gets arrested. But his arrest doesn't last long, because he gets out on bail, and the day before he's supposed to go on trial, he flees town, and he heads from Los Angeles all the way over to the Hamptons in New York. And there, he starts making lots of friends again in the social scene, because, like I said, he's a charming motherfucker. And so he invents another backstory to tell these people. He tells them that he's a Rockefeller, one of the richest families in US history. So he makes all these new friends, and now he has access to all the best parties with rich people in the Hamptons. And so he starts conning people all over again. And he takes these people out for these big impressive dinners and these fancy places, and he starts talking about investments, and everybody wants to hear investment tips from a Rockefeller. And so again, this con works like magic. He gets one woman to invest $14,000, another couple to invest $50,000 with him, another woman to invest $25,000, and he cons a real estate agent out of $100,000. And all these poor suckers, they think they're gonna make a ton of money after Frenchie invests for them. But, spoiler alert, he just ends up keeping their money. And of course, he uses it to continue living this insane, lavish lifestyle he lives. And it seems like bro is never gonna get caught. Until. So here's the thing about Frenchie. He likes to flex, like he likes to feel rich. And so he tells all his Hamptons friends that he lives in this big mansion on the fanciest street in town. But in reality, he doesn't. He's living out of a local bed and breakfast. Now, at this bed and breakfast, he hasn't been paying his bill. And eventually, the bill builds up to around $19,000. $19,000? What kind of bed and breakfast is this? And so the owners of this bed and breakfast, they get tired of Frenchie's excuses, and one day they report him to the police. And so, bam, police arrest him again. Here's his mugshot. And so Frenchie gives police a fake name and a fake ID, and he's able to post bail the next day. And at this point in the story, police have no idea he's a wanted criminal. They just think he's a guy who didn't pay his hotel bill. So Frenchie takes advantage of this, and he immediately flees the Hamptons and goes north all the way to Canada. Meanwhile, in Canada, Frenchie starts conning people there too. He tells people he's a famous Formula One driver for Ferrari, and people believe him. But then he screws up big, and he messes with the wrong ones. Because after 8 months of living in Canada, he befriends this older businessman and his wife. And he bullshits them, and he tells them he's this famous race car driver for Ferrari. And they're all impressed. They're like, oh, cool. And Frenchie convinces them to invest $150,000 into some fake business venture he invented. But they eventually realize it's a con, and they report him to Canadian police. And so, boom, once again, he gets arrested. And Frenchie spends a year in Canadian prison before he has to return back to the US, where he pleads guilty to his crimes, and he's sentenced to 3 years, 10 months in US prison. But story's still going, because while he's in prison, Frenchie writes an autobiography where he talks about his crimes, which becomes a bestseller back in France. And by the way, in this book, he actually makes fun of his victims. He basically mocks them and calls them stupid for believing him. It's very French of him. Anyway, when he gets out of prison, he goes back to France, and he's kind of a celebrity there. He signs a book deal to write a second book, and he sells his name for use in a clothing line, Rocancourt Jeans. Rocancourt is his last name. And eventually, he befriends this French film director, this woman, Catherine. And Catherine is fascinated by Frenchie's story, and she finds him charming as fuck. And so she wants to give him a second chance at life, and she casts him as the lead in a feature film she's making. A feature film starring Naomi Campbell. And here's a picture of Frenchie and Naomi Campbell on the red carpet. And so Catherine and Frenchie, they start spending lots of time together, and they become friends, and eventually he starts asking her to borrow money. And then he asks her for a little more, and then a little more, and unfortunately for Catherine, pretty quickly, Frenchie ends up conning her out of 700,000 euros, or about 760,000 US dollars. And because he cons her, the movie project is suddenly canceled. But then Catherine ends up writing another film. She ends up making a semi-autobiographical movie about getting conned by Frenchie, and that movie about getting conned by Frenchie apparently does well and gets really good reviews, so good for her. But anyway, Frenchie eventually gets convicted for conning her, and he gets sentenced to 16 months in prison. And it's estimated that in total, over the years, he conned people out of $40 million. Wow. Here's what he looks like in real life.